the American public.
France and South Korea have also got evacuation plans.
But you need to prepare for and assume
strongly warning Americans to avoid all non-essential travel to China.
That this is going to be a real serious problem.
France, Australia, Canada, the US, Singapore, Cambodia, Vietnam, the list goes on.
Health officials are investigating more than 100 possible cases in the US.
Germany, a man has contracted the virus.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
Japan, where a bus driver contracted the virus.
Coronavirus has killed more than 100 people there and infected more than 4,500.
We have to prepare for the worst, always, because if you don't and the worst happens.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome. You're in the War Room. It is Thursday, the 5th of November, the year of our Lord 2020. We're live from the nation's capital with our special afternoon show. Every day we're going to be on from 5 to 7 p.m. thanks to the work of Real America's Voice and the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're going to have a bunch of stars of the network of Real America's Voice today. Governor Greitens, Raheem Kassam, all of them to come on in this 5 to 7 period. We get field reports from everywhere, analytics, data, legal. We're going to put you, we're going to get you in the middle of actually what's going on. The cavalry has arrived, just to kind of give you a broad view of the map. In Pennsylvania, we have Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of Florida, and Corey Lewandowski. Up there with Eric Trump, and they're now filing suits in federal court to stop that madness right now and let everybody get their hands around all the fraud and election administration breakdowns that have gone on in the unverifiable, uncertifiable, illegal votes. In Georgia, we have Kimberly Guilfoyle and Don Jr. They're filing suit down there. They're also going to get a recount already. In Arizona, we have Dave Bossie. We have Boris Epshteyn is out there. In Nevada, we have Rick Grinnell. And Reince Priebus is heading to Wisconsin. We already have a top team in Charlie Spees and others from the RNC in Michigan. So for our audience, it's not this is a day to celebrate. The reason to celebrate, Donald Trump has been reelected. We're heading towards the inauguration, and we're going to get work done. And the cavalry is now out everywhere where these things are contested. It's going to be fine. We're going to have field reports from everywhere, from Arizona, from Pennsylvania. We have people in the field, people associated with the show are going to call in. We're going to get up to date. We've got Raheem Kassam, Sam Fettis from the CIA. Many of the on-the-ground reporters of Real America Voice are going to do this every afternoon to make sure before you sit down to supper that you've had a full briefing for 2 hours and you understand what's going on so you don't buy the spin. Right now they're running around pulling the hair for. Are they going to call Pennsylvania? Is AP going to call? It doesn't matter. They have no standing. They're just a bunch of guys wandering around with this feckless old man up in Delaware. The probability that the feckless puppet of Wall Street and the Chinese Communist Party wandering around the car dealership talking to the newest version, the latest slate of Toyotas is going to be President of the United States Commander-in-Chief and Chief Magistrate is zero. Zero. Will not happen. Donald Trump will be inaugurated. In fact, I think this is what I celebrate. We got a bonus 80. Instead of just 4 more years, we get this whole, it would be a transition if somebody else, but since he won, there's no transition. It's just bonus time. We're in bonus time. And he's going to take full advantage of bonus time. Just to reiterate that, got one of the smartest guys around, Brian Kennedy from Claremont, one of the great strategic advisors, an advisor to the American Bond Foundation, the guys trying to get the money for these bonds that we issued back in, I think, in the 1910s or the 1920s to pay for the infrastructure from Sun Yat-sen. And the Chinese, being the noble, decent people they are, were paying us as they go until the Chinese communist took over the country in the Civil War, and then they stiffed us, right? We kind of gave them a break during the war with Japan, but then they stiffed us afterwards. Brian Kennedy, the reason I want to have Brian on here, he's come out with a plan. I think he's still in draft. That's why we have not put it up as soon as Brian gives us permission. But Brian, welcome. Come back. Let's get Brian up. Brian Kennedy. And Brian, the reason I wanted to have you to kick off the show is that you've got this report of what's got to happen now and what's got to happen in the second term. Can you walk our audience through? Because it's time to get to work. The President of the United States won a massive victory on Tuesday, the 3rd of November, and now it's time to start acting like that. Let's roll. I want to see Peter Navarro with 30 executive orders every day. I want to see Christopher Wray's head on a pike. I want to see Fauci's head on a pike. I want to see the formal investigation of Fauci start, by the Justice Department, right? Everything Fauci, what he told the president in the task force, and then what he told the media afterwards, all of his contacts. We want to, get in and get testimony from all of CNBC, all of CNN, all of MSNBC, the whole posse, right? So, Brian, talk to us about this report you guys have, and when are we going to be able to put it out, and what are the details of it?
Yeah, no, it's already up. The final version should be up on the Claremont.org website. That's CLAREMONT.org website. And it is a exercise that Claremont did with the Texas Public Policy Foundation 3 weeks ago. And it was meant to be a counter to John Podesta and that Transition Integrity Project that they did several months ago, where the Democrats laid out what they were going to do to try to steal this election. And they've been carrying that out over the last, 2 days, 3 days. And in our simulation...
Okay, hold on. So, Brian, hang right there. Stay right there. Talk to our audience. Transition Integrity was the convergence of lawfare, social media oligarchs, mainstream media, and their street thugs. A combo to basically steal the election. This was the plan to steal 2020, the Raheem Kassam, Steve Bannon roadshow. Tell us in the last 48 hours, be specific, how have you seen them execute their Transition Integrity Project?
Well, the first thing they did was engage in information warfare. And so, not to be at all conspiratorial, but you had Fox News, which had been the source, one of the key sources of conservative information, news, what have you. You had them immediately, the night of the election, shift from being conservative and thought of as pro-Trump to turning on President Trump immediately. The election close in Virginia, East Coast, they immediately called Virginia. I think probably President Trump won Virginia. They wait an hour or two, and then they call Arizona for Joe Biden as well, when there was no evidence to suggest that Arizona should have been called for Joe Biden. And so they were able to manipulate public opinion and the political landscape by calling Arizona for Joe Biden. And that is part of the crisis we're in today. Donald Trump, I believe, won that election. He will be found to have won the election. He is our president. He will be our president. That's the good news here. We're going to use every constitutional means at our disposal to fix it. But the American left has joined, Fox News has joined them in trying to oust President Trump by manipulating all the data, all the media, and trying to establish in the public mind that there is this popular enthusiasm for Joe Biden when in fact it does not exist. There is no way Joe Biden got more votes than Barack Obama did in 2012. There's no way that happened. Impossible.
Impossible. In
the simulation we did, by the way, and you can find it on Claremont.org, it's a 79 days report. In that simulation, we anticipated this exact scenario being played out right now. We wouldn't know on election night. There would be challenges to the absentee ballots. The electoral process, the administration would break down in all of these states, and a crisis would emerge. That's what we're seeing playing out. But having done so, we have a lot of tools at our disposal, as you've been saying, all day long, that the Constitution gives us provisions for states to seat electors. State legislatures can seat the electors that will eventually vote for the president.
Hang on, I want to hit the rewind. I want to go back through this right now. I want people to understand the Constitution was a contract. It was hotly negotiated by some of the smartest lawyers that this country has ever had, and men of the world that understood, because of their education, their study of Plutarch and their understanding of the Roman Republic and the Empire and the great civilizations of the past, and being real students of history and understanding British history in their civil war. These were learned men and tough negotiators and great lawyers, not good lawyers, great lawyers. Okay, the Constitution is a contract, and there's remedies in that contract, as in every contract. They understand things wouldn't be perfect because they understood that human nature would get involved here. There's a remedy. They understand that there would be, on occasions, there might be chaos in these elections, and they set out a remedy in the contract. So, Brian Kennedy of Claremont, walk us through, and I want you to walk through now, what these remedies are in times of chaos, sir.
Well, I mean, the easiest remedy in this particular crisis is that you have states where it looked like one candidate, Donald Trump, had won, was winning. It was clear he had won. And then the voting stops, as we know, and then it picks back up and it radically changes. The numbers radically start changing to the point where any reasonable human being would think that fraud was occurring. Now, in that, a state legislature would have the ability to then examine what went on and decide whether to accept the recommendation, the tally by the Secretary of State, what we have as today's Secretaries of State in most places, or to seat themselves, the electors, based on their judgment. They swore an oath to the Constitution. Their judgment would then decide, is this a valid election? Should we seat the electors that the Secretary of State has given us, or should we examine it and then seat our own electors? And so if I'm a state legislator in Pennsylvania and I see that massive fraud occurred and that my Secretary of State is not willing to administer the vote adequately, I can then convene the legislature and we can have a vote. We can have a political debate. We can make this political, in which case the Pennsylvania legislature or Wisconsin or Michigan or North Carolina or wherever can then vote themselves to seat electors. And then there is an honest, open debate, discussion. There's nothing being stolen. There's nothing that everyone cannot see and be part of. And I think our movement, the movement of people who want to defend the Constitution, can go to those places. People in those states can petition their legislators. They can have rallies in those states. They can make the case to the people.
Yes. And President Trump can actually make the rallies, and I'm sure you're going to see rallies. We've got under 2 minutes, and I want to keep you over, Brian. We've got so much. We're going to back up some stuff, but we'll get it all in. We've got live reports from on the ground. We're going to have Barris back with analytics. We have Bill Mcginley coming in with legal. We've got all that. I want to go to one thing. Now, if they can't do that, if they can't certify, and remember, this has to be votes have to be certified, verified, chain of custody, legal votes. Now, if you can't do that, you're in the courts, you're doing recounts. If you can't do that, and the legislature can't do it, if you blow past the safe harbor, because there's a time the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking for them to steal this. So these thieves in the night, the clock's ticking. If they get past the 8th, the safe harbor, and there's not actually a slate of electors up to the Electoral College, it gets kicked into the House of Representatives, does it not? The Congress, does it not, Brian Kennedy?
Right, and that's called a contingent election.
Contingent. Hang on, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to the contingent election when we return with Brian Kennedy of Claremont, one of the great strategic thinkers in our country, a man whose hair is not on fire. Right? Let's say crazy Steve Bannon. Well, hey, there's some pretty solid, stable citizens out there like Brian Kennedy, Phil Klein, and others. We're going to have the show today. Have thought this through. President Donald J. Trump is the President of the United States. He's going to remain the President of the United States. The will of the people spoke on November 3rd, the year of our Lord, 2020. We're just here to implement that, the people's will. Fog City Midge, Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon. We're going to return with Brian Kennedy in just a moment.
Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Hi, we're back. We're doing election specials. We don't even do cold opens anymore because we got so much stuff to cram in. I want to go back to Brian Kennedy. Brian, if it can't happen with the electors and the votes, and it's all mashed up, and they got these unverifiable votes, and you can't actually have the electors go to the state capitals on the 14th. You've blown through the safe harbor in the 8th. You then have something called you take Christmas off, and you have what's called a contingent election. The Congress that was elected on November 3rd comes in. They're sworn in on the 3rd of January. And then you have, I think it's on the 6th, you have what's called a contingent election. Can you walk the nation through what we mean by a contingent election, what it is, how it's played out, and why it will be the thing, I believe, that will formally elect Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States?
Sure. The House will be divided up by state delegations. And so even though the Democrats have the majority in the House, when you look at an individual state delegation, you take the majority within that state delegation, and that then becomes representative for that state. So in California, that is going to be obviously one Democrat vote. In Wyoming, where it's all Republican, that's going to be one Republican vote. And then you're going to go state by
California
state.
California with 40 million people is going to get one Democratic vote because they have a Democratic majority in their congressional delegation. In Wyoming, that's very Republican. It gets one vote, and they have, 790,000 people, correct?
Right. When you do it that way by the states, and remember, we're a republic, and it's a republic of the United States, the states then will vote. And right now, there are 27 Republican states, 22 Democratic states, and then when you divide up the other pieces, there are 2 that are tied. And so under that scenario, if all the Republican states voted for President Trump, and they can only vote for President Trump, then he'd be the president. The Democrats obviously would vote for Joe Biden, and it would be 27 to 22, maybe 27 to 24, or the 2 states that are tied could decide to vote one way or the other. They vote for the president. The Senate votes for the vice president. And so the senators would assemble in the Senate, and they would vote to see who the next vice president would be. And the majority today is Republican, and they're extremely likely to vote for Mike Pence.
Yeah. Just remember, in this, and there'll be all kind of games played about how you get quorum, stuff like that. If it gets down to noon on the 20th, Nancy Pelosi does become the acting president. Only for that time it takes to work out. Only people that can be elected president are people who got electoral votes in the election. That will you only have a choice of Biden or Trump. So one of those 2 would ultimately be it. And this is why Georgia is going to become the center of the known universe for politics quite quickly, because those runoff elections, at least the one for Kelly Loeffler, and maybe if they keep cheating down in Georgia, and they're going to, at 6 o'clock, have a live press conference we're going to try to get to with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Don Jr., Senator Perdue, and others about this fiasco down in Georgia. That if it was that we inadvertently lost those 2, which we won't, but if we did, Kamala Harris could be the vice president of the United States in this contingent election. So there's all kind of possibilities right now. And I think your math, my math, I think got rid of the 2 ties with the new Congress, but I could be wrong. But we'll work on that another time. Here's the point. We have the votes in the House by state. And the reason is we were modeled off the Roman Republic, and the Roman Republic voted by tribes. They didn't take a raw vote, or the populace. They didn't take a raw vote. You voted by tribes, and each tribe got a vote, right? That's how they based the United States, was predicated upon the founders' great respect for the Republic of Rome. And what's the watchword of the Legion of the Republic of Rome? Fortune favors boldness, White House. Boldness. You're the President of the United States. Let's act like President of the United States. Let's start taking some action. Where are the 50 executive orders from Peter Navarro? Right? Let's go after the CCP. So to step back, we have Mark Levin and these great, amazing lawyers and people that have been advocates for the Constitution. This is a defining moment, is it not, for us, Brian Kennedy? You define yourself as an individual. You define yourself as a nation in the cauldron of a crisis. Do you believe we're in that crisis now?
Absolutely, we are. This is a crisis like we've never faced before, and now is the time. The next leader of MAGA, Make America Great Again, they're going to be the men and women who stand up right now and stand with President Trump against this coup. And one thing I would recommend, though, to your viewers is to make sure that they don't simply adopt the narrative that they are fed by the mainstream media, and I would include in that Fox News. I think some of our heroes in Fox News, the Tucker Carlsons, the Sean Hannitys, I think they are being marginalized here. I think they are pulling back. And I hate to say that, and I hope it's not true, but I don't see it. And I fear that Fox News has become the vanguard of the anti-Trump movement. I pray I'm wrong about that, but it's certainly looking that way. And I'd recommend to all your viewers not to accept whatever narrative they put forth, because I fear it's going to be, let's just be good losers and accept Joe Biden. And it didn't happen. President Trump won on Tuesday.
He won on Tuesday. What would you recommend? Before I let you go, Brian, we're going to have you back on to do more depth later in the weekend. But what would you recommend? This audience is metastasized now. And part of it is that they're looking for sources to give them information and can tell them where to go to do something. Not what to do, but where to go to kind of do something. What would you recommend? I know they have to go to Claremont. We're going to put it up. It's 79 pages, but you need to read it. You need to read it. You need to take some time and kind of go through it, mark it up. They got to go to Claremont and get your 79-day report, which is the counter to the Transition Integrity Report. What else should our viewers do?
I think there's a lot of good stuff being done over at the Federalist right now. I think that some of that's super. I'd recommend watching your show in America's Voice. I think that's the new place to go for not just conservative news, just the truth. And I would say the one thing that's most important is not to lose hope here at all. This is a great country. You're going to see it rally to the Constitution, to freedom, and to the one guy today who is defending that, and that's Donald Trump. And we can't in any way be discouraged at all. We won, and now we have to use the Constitution to defend that.
Brian, what is your Twitter handle? How do people get to you?
On Twitter, it's Brian T. Kennedy 1, and a bunch of links up there to everything else.
Okay, Brian.
Hey, Brian, heads up, your website, Claremont.org, was either crashing or somebody was trying to block it from our audience trying to look at it. Now, I went and checked that. It did have like an error screen for a while. It looks like it's come back up, but either defend your ground, buddy.
Either we sent so much traffic to you or someone's trying to DDoS attack. Could be either, but please let our audience on.
I'll make sure they fix that.
Just remember, Brian, our audience, it comes in looks a little rough, but they have good hearts. Okay? Brian Kennedy, what a fabulous guy. They're American. They are the deplorables. The American Lao Beijing, old 100 names. I want to thank G News, GTV. Everybody's doing this in Mandarin. The show's on fire in China. They're learning about democracy. And they're learning that, like Ronald Reagan said, it's only one generation. The Chinese have not had one generation in 10,000 years that's had freedom. That's why the election the other day is the most important election in Chinese history. They've not had freedom in 10,000 years. But you see the diaspora. You see what they're doing. Okay, I want to go now to John Fredericks, the John Fredericks Radio Network, our sponsor. John, tell me what is going on at Virginia 7. This is an incredibly important district. I thought Nick, the Special Forces guy, fabulous guy, I thought he won the other night. But they pulled a President Trump on him. All of a sudden, they're finding votes everywhere down at Virginia 7. I thought you were on top of this, Fredericks. I thought you were the chairman of the Trump thing and had this under control. What's going on?
Well, Steve, it's game on. It's basically what this is. The irregularities in the voting in Henrico County, which is part of the 7th District, are stunning. So here's what happens. Nick Freitas wins game day big. Now, all of a sudden, here it comes again. The absentee ballots start coming in. In Henrico County, which is one of the key counties in the 7th District, they deliver what they called a memory stick. You and I call it a thumb drive. On the thumb drive is 15,000 ballots. on a thumb drive. The thumb drive was labeled provisional ballots. Well, provisional ballots don't get counted until you go through them. So they're not really part of the election until later if you need them. Then they count the ballots. Then they say, well, we mislabeled the thumb drive. It was labeled improperly. So then they backtrack that. Then the Virginia Board of Elections gets involved and says, well, there was irregularities. We were missing 21,000 absentee ballots we thought we had. We can't find them. Oh, here they are. They're on a thumb drive. So Henrico County is saying, well, we mislabeled the memory stick, but everything is fine. And, oh, by the way, here's enough votes. And now Abigail Spanberger wins. She wins by 5,000. Meantime, there's still 6,000 haven't been counted. Look, Nick Freitas is making a statement tomorrow. This is game on. We're going to get a major lawsuit by the Freitas campaign here in the 7th District to find out what's going on with these ballots. But this is just another instance where ballots get delivered that no one saw, just enough to put the Democrat over the top. This is what they did in California and Orange County in 2018, and now they're doing it in Virginia. And it's just game on.
John, I got a punch. I'm going to be in the John Fredericks radio show tomorrow at 8 o'clock, give a situation report. John, we want to get you on this afternoon show more and more. John Fredericks of the John Fredericks Radio Network. Game on in Virginia 7. By the way, I want to hear that from everybody in the country. Where's your game on? We're not backing down an inch on this, okay? They're going to put remember the memory sticks? Remember the ones stolen in Philadelphia? Remember that? Remember that? Is that connected back? We'll be back in a second. We're going to go to Philadelphia. We're going to go to Arizona next.
Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Remember, this show is what it is because of the audience. You're the most powerful audience in the world. You've already changed history many times. The reason is people, why do hedge funds in London listen to the show? Why do intelligence services from throughout the world listen to the show? Why do politicians from throughout the world in the United States listen to the show, and their staffs, TV producers? They want to know what the deplorables think, and they want to know what they're hearing. They want to know what they're responding to. Please go to hashtag War Room Pandemic. Please go in the live stream. We want to hear your comments. We want to hear your observations, particularly if you're a new viewer of the show or listener, either on Newsmax TV, on Real America's Voice, Dish Channel 219, the John Fredericks Radio Network. If you're on at G News, GTV, and Mandarin, or any of our distribution platforms, including the podcast, which is now, I think, 17 million downloads, anywhere, we're ubiquitous, we're free. We're here to change history, and we change history through you. It's your show. We want to hear what you think about that. We're now going to go, today we're going out to the hustings. Remember, the cavalry is arriving. The cavalry is arriving. Don Jr., Kimberly Guilfoyle, others are landing now in Atlanta, Georgia. There's going to be a press conference at 6 o'clock. They're going to make a statement. Rick Grinnell's out lighting them up in Nevada. Dave Bossie, Boris Epstein, and others are out in Arizona. Corey Lewandowski, Pam Bondi's up in Philadelphia. Reince Priebus is going to Wisconsin. Charlie Spees and others are already in Michigan. The Calvary's John Fredericks they're about to drop a big lawsuit in Richmond, Virginia, and Virginia 7. There's going to be a lot more where that came from. Going to fight back on this, and we've already won. The reason you know you won, look at down ticket. We held the Senate. We picked up seats in the House. We picked up seats in state legislatures, right? Going to be a massive fight in Georgia for the Senate seat. And if they keep cheating, maybe Purdue goes into 50%. That's fine. Bring it. We'll do two Senate races at the same time. Beat you guys about the head and shoulder again. No problem. Check another box. Want to now go out to one of the most hotly contested, controversial is in Arizona. Now I want to go out front of the Maricopa County Elections Headquarters with Real America's Voice own Ben Berquam. Ben, thank you for joining us. Got Fog City Midge, Stephen K. Bannon, Jack Maxey here in the War Room. How you doing, brother?
What's going on, guys? God bless you. We are out here. People are fired up. They're upset. They want their voices to be heard. They believe there's been fraud. We're seeing it all over the country, and they're out in front of the election office, and they're just saying, "Let our voices, let our votes be counted." And that's really the question: are those votes, are Trump votes being counted? We've heard from multiple sources that they aren't. That because of the Sharpie issue and some of the other issues, that we're disenfranchising Trump voters while we continue to allow fraudulent votes. And we're seeing that all over the country, and this is one of the epicenters right here in Maricopa County, Phoenix, Arizona.
Ben, I see how pumped up the crowd is. What is, as you know it right now, we got Dave Bossie heading out there, Boris Epstein from the campaign. What is I think people are kind of concerned. What is actually the issue? And it seems like more votes are showing up all the time, and it's particularly centered around Maricopa County. Why is this thing not counted yet? It doesn't seem that complicated. Why? And particularly you got Governor Ducey, some pretty squared away people at the state level. What exactly is the problem?
Well, I was inside there yesterday watching them count the ballots. It's very odd. I mean, the fact that when they first announced the first numbers on the night of the election, they basically and then ended up giving it to Joe Biden right then. We didn't get any other numbers for 4 hours that night, and they just started trickling in, and they've been trickling in ever since. What I was told by the communications deputy director here, they can only process around 100,000 to 130,000 votes per day, which begs the question, why didn't you increase staffing? You knew it was going to be a higher turnout. There's all kinds of questions around that. And on top of that, we continue to see these discrepancies in the votes. We're hearing that not just from here in Arizona, but again, from Michigan and Pennsylvania, votes that are showing up from nowhere. The frustrating thing to the people behind me and to many of us watching is we're getting to a place where we just don't trust the process of the election anymore. And that's the concern I think that I have and so many others have, is when we get to a place where all of a sudden these ballots start showing up out of nowhere, and they always tend to go towards the Democrats. it's disconcerting at minimum. And we actually have, I don't know if we have the videos set up. We had some interviews with some of those folks last night on the
We're going to play. Yeah, we're going to play in 1 second. One last question I want to ask you before we go to your video is, what was the response? Right back, you've got obviously the Trump faithful. What was the response of the Trump faithful and yourself when you saw that Fox News called this, with what we now know of the new votes that have come in, was probably around 60% of the vote? What was the reaction from the Trump supporters?
Absolute disgust. When that came out, there was a boo, and the location that I was in, the whole place booed. And in fact, last night they were chanting against Fox News. There's a bunch of signs out here in opposition to Fox News. People are fed up, they're pissed off, and really, this is the battle that we're in. It's not just the votes that we're dealing with now. This has been an onslaught by the media, the fake news media, and even some of those that were supposedly on our side, now for years coming out, and you're seeing the coup, the 4 years of coup attempt, the Russia collusion hoax, the Stormy Daniels, Quid Pro Joe, all of that, to the COVID and now to this, all of this, everything is set up against America, and President Trump and the Trump administration has been the only thing fighting back, and that's why President Trump supporters aren't going anywhere. They're standing up, they're fighting back, and they're not going to sit down. They're not going to take this. They're going to continue to fight.
Ben, will you hold on for a second? Vish, what I'd like to do, the guys in Denver, I'd like to play Ben's role, his interviews, and then, Ben, we're going to come back to you, so just hold. Let's play it.
We're just not okay with the Sharpie, them handing out Sharpies. I've talked to so many people that have voted with the damn Sharpie, and we're just not having that. So we're not going to have voter fraud in Arizona.
On the ballot, it says use ballpoint blue or black ink only, no Sharpie marker.
Right.
It says it right on the ballot. So if they're having a problem with that, then they need to fix what they're talking about.
Right.
It's been too long that we've allowed the Democrats by sneaking ballots in the middle of the night. It happened here our last election where unauthorized boxes of ballots were found in unauthorized vehicles and unauthorized places.
It's sad that we stay right here and we steal votes like this. I don't have a problem with the opposition winning, but do it right. At least pretend that you do it right. Don't just do it and throw in my face, insult our intelligence. Like, we don't know and we don't see what you guys do. That's all.
We just want all the votes counted,
We did test.
Ben, I wanted to say that was so powerful, particularly the guy with the beard saying, hey, if you win, you win. That's fine. But if you're going to steal it, respect my intelligence. Steal it smart, or at least, acknowledge that you're stealing it. So, Ben, here's the question. Right now, this show's on fire. We got guys from all over the world watching. The question to you is very simple. Are the Trump supporters, the Trump voters in Arizona, are they going to back down 1 inch from demanding that this vote be a fair vote and that this vote shows what exactly went on in Arizona on November 3rd, which was a resounding victory for Donald Trump?
No, what I've been told over and over in the group behind me, the faithful that love this country, the people that are fighting the fight for this nation, they are not going to stop. This is just the beginning of restoring this country. We've been in this battle for 50 years, really hardcore for the last 10 years, where the socialist, communist, Marxists are now just openly saying they want to destroy this country, and the people are awake. They're not going to take it anymore, especially when it comes to their one sacred duty and gift that this country gives you, the ability to vote. If we lose that, we lose this nation. And what I'm being told is they will not sit down, and we cannot sit down and allow this to happen.
I want to take a shot of that. I want to just see that audience. Go full screen. It doesn't need to see me. I want to see that entire audience right there. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the great awakening. That's the great. For our radio audience, this is a mass protest outside the Maricopa County election in Maricopa County in the Phoenix area. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the great awakening we're talking about.
And it's just getting started.
Ben, thank you very much from Maricopa County. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, guys.
Fabulous
They're expecting
report.
Thousands more tonight, just a heads up. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Maybe we go Ben at the end of the 6 o'clock hour, but tell Ben, give him a heads up. I want to come back to him. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the Great Awakening. They had a 96-mile caravan spontaneously set up. You said people call me today. The media is President Trump going to be rallying? I said I don't think President. Maybe, but I don't think he needs to rally. I think his troops are rallying. Look what's happening in Maricopa County during a workday, right? And Ben says it's going to get bigger and bigger. For you at home, for you right now in the live chat, this is building every minute of every day. Donald Trump was reelected on November 3rd. Absolutely. It's just categorical. You can see the down ticket, right? They can attempt to steal this. The only way they will steal it if we let them. If you let them. You see that out there in Phoenix? And let me tell you, living in Arizona is not that easy, even with air conditioning, okay? It's still the Wild West. That's still tough. Those are tough hombres. I love the guy with the beard, right? That's a Trump supporter right there. That last guy with the beard was epic. We're not going to let them steal it, right? Because they don't, they're insulting my intelligence. Let's go now to Philadelphia. Do we have Raheem? Let's go to Philadelphia. We're going to go up to Pennsylvania. We're going to go around the country. We also got legal analysis. We're going to have data analysis. We've got it all. But we wanted to give you a feel today of where the fight is. The fight is out in the country. And you've also got smart guys. We got smarter guys than you got the Brian Kennedys. We got the Phil Kleins. We got the Bill McGinleys. We got smart people that have thought this through. There's a plan. The plays that you saw me on Maria this morning, the play's been called Run the Play. The play's been called Run the Play. And here's the play. Defend the Constitution. President Trump took an oath to God at noon on the 20th of January, the year of our Lord, 2017. He took an oath to God on the Holy Bible. The Holy Bible, of the foundation of the Judeo-Christian West. Right? An oath to God to defend the Constitution. And what you see out in Arizona with what the founders knew, they knew the citizens of the United States. What did Franklin say? We're a new race. Remember that? He said we're rougher, we're tougher, because we had to take a wilderness, a vast wilderness, and turn it into the greatest nation on earth. I want to now go to Philadelphia to our co-host, Raheem Kassam, who's actually in the field up there with Corey Lewandowski, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the state of Florida. Raheem, give us an update. What is going on? What can you report?
Yeah, well, the Secretary of State for Pennsylvania just got up on television and gave a short statement, about 15 minutes worth of updates, which broadly included nothing, saying, we're still too close to call. We've got no developments here. The problem is, since this morning, not a lot has changed on the ground. The campaign, the Trump lawyers still don't really have access to monitor these ballots as they're being counted. Now, remember, they got a court this morning to give them access. They took the court order to the polling, to the count, and they weren't allowed in. They then called the sheriff. The sheriff refused to enforce the court order. And then when some did finally get in, I believe that instead of allowing them what they wanted to be 6 feet away from the people counting so that they could figure out what was going on here, what they did is they let them in and then moved the machines further away in the room. So they were no closer to being able to verify any of that.
Hey, Raheem,
Now,
Raheem, hang on for 1 second. We're going to take a break. I'm going to come back. I need all this reports, particularly how sheriffs don't enforce a court order. Even in Philadelphia, I thought, even in Pennsylvania.
And this is what I've said all along. Sheriffs are key. They are your last defense against your constitutional rights.
Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. Fog City Midge, Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon, Raheem Kassam, up in the heart of it. City of Brotherly Love. Next.
Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room. Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
This is the reason we're doing the afternoon show. This is Stephen K. Bannon. You're in the War Room from the nation's capital. We're trying to tie together all the assets of the John Frederick Radio Network, particularly Real America's Voice, throughout the country to bring you breaking news. Today at 6 o'clock in Atlanta, Georgia, we're going to have a press conference down there. Kimberly Guilfoyle, Don Jr., Senator Perdue making other announcements about Georgia. We just understood. What is it, Raheem? We got the president's going to address, going to do a press briefing at 6:30. We'll be breaking in and showing you all the highlights from those that are going live if we need to. This show is to make sure before supper that you get the chance to get the news of the day on this and to be able to chew on it over dinner, talk to the family about it around the table. Jack Maxey, Maggie Vanderberg, and Stephen K. Bannon here with our other co-hosts in Philadelphia. So, Raheem, a lot has changed. They actually filed federal lawsuits. The Secretary of State, the reason she said it's too close to call and they can't do anything is Trump's still winning, right? They're not going to do anything until they've counted these the fraudulent ballots, the uncertified, unverifiable, fraudulent ballots, right, with no chain of custody. Until they they keep generating hundreds of thousands of those until they know they get a victory. That's when they'll announce it. Is that basically what the scam is?
Yeah, that's right. At the moment, the news networks are reporting that the president continues to lead in Pennsylvania by about 90,000 votes. But as you say, they have found what appeared to be another 360-odd thousand. Now, they say they've counted some of those already, so there remains 326,000 ballots to be counted in Pennsylvania now. Remember, these are new. These have just been found. These are just being added to the totals. And, of course, downtown.
So Raheem, how do you just find over 300,000 ballots? You could take city blocks and fill up the buildings with 300,000 ballots. How did they just get found?
Yeah, they're not really explaining much of how they get found. They explain sort of how, in a broad sense, we were doing a sweep of this polling location and there was a box here. We've got plenty of evidence of that on the live blog that we're doing over at the National Pulse. Natalie Winters is actually breaking down every single time there is a claim made, every single time there is some excuse made for these ballots coming forward. We've got it up on the site, so you can go and look at it there. But here's the thing as well, because I'm not just sitting in a hotel room here in Philadelphia with my delicious cup of water. I've got, we've been out on the streets today. We went out after the War Room show this morning. I went and there's a whole host, about 100 Trump supporters down there, maybe about 300 leftist protesters. And the Trump supporters, interestingly enough, all having Trump flags. The leftists, only one of them I counted had a Biden-Harris sign, but the left are being very, very aggressive about this. They're getting in people's faces. They're trying to intimidate people. They're trying to scare them away. The Trump supporters, a lot of older people, sort of sitting there with their flags and their signs and refusing to move right there in front of the convention center. And I just worry because the left is being very, very aggressive earlier on when I was there. And I worry about some of those older people going into the night. The sun is set here right now. Going into the night, what's going to take place, and we'll be out there covering it.
What is the we just came from Maricopa County where they're on fire. What is the attitude of the people up there in Philadelphia?
Well, look, I mean, a lot of it's interesting because I hear from the Trump campaign that they're not quite sure where to be sending people at the moment. They're not sure if they need to be sent to Georgia, not sure if they even need to be sending people possibly to Wisconsin at this point to have bodies on the ground. Now, a lot of people, a lot of donors have offered up the ability for people to travel around the country to make sure that you have a presence in these places. Because, of course, places like Philadelphia, downtown Philadelphia, you're not naturally going to get a lot of Trump supporters downtown Philadelphia. Although I did meet a Southern Philadelphia guy earlier, War Room fan, who was out there protesting on behalf of the president. And so we're looking at where the campaign is looking to deploy their assets at the moment. The people on the ground don't have a great idea of what's going on. That is a source of frustration. They're worried about this. They're right to be worried about this because, as you keep repeating, as we'll keep reporting, these are not just magic ballots. These are fraudulent ballots that are appearing all across the country.
Don't use the term magic is too cute a term. We're not here to be cute. Okay, we're not here to be cute. We're here to win. We're here to close in this victory.
And we're here to call it what it is. This is not magic. This is evil machinations of a corrupted system in the city of Philadelphia, the city of Atlanta, the city of Kenosha, the city of Milwaukee, on and on and on. And what is the common denominator? Very simple. I want to give Raheem one thing, though. I would not be too worried about those elderly people who are out there. You know why? Because those elderly people, I probably know some of them. They thrashed me good as a young man. And they built this country, and they are willing to fight for it.
Didn't clearly thrash you enough. Jack Maxey. Raheem, real quickly before you bounce, National Pulse, what's hot? What are you guys showing? Are you still doing your live blog? I know you've been taken down about 30 times.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we should be restored access to our Twitter account later on this evening. We'll see if that happens, and we'll see how quickly it gets taken back down again. But yes, Natalie Winter's updating it. There's an update just about every 2 or 3 minutes going up there right now. And whether it's ballots being found, whether it's Twitter accounts being censored, you know, the news that the news isn't telling you what's going on out there. I had some pictures earlier on in the day of a protester threatening to blow Donald Trump's brains out that I took the video of down here in Philadelphia. So we're updating it with everything across the country, whether it's color, whether it's protest, whether it's election, whether it's ballots, fraud, you name it. We've got it up there on the live blog. So I encourage people to check it out. It's the biggest and most central resource for all of this news.
Okay, everybody want to go to the National Pulse site. Raheem, thank you very much. Maggie, what do you got for us on voter fraud? You've been collecting, you've been curating this all day. What are your any updates?
So yeah, there are anecdotal accounts that are happening across the board, which is, you know, not a great source, but they are happening across the nation. People coming out and saying, look, I've been working as a poll booth watcher. This is what I'm seeing. You know, so a lot of this stuff is yet to be verified, but people are giving their names in these videos. They're saying who they are. You know, that they're coming out and documenting this stuff. So,
are there also people that are Democrats that have been these election? They've been inside counting and they're fed up with what's going on?
Yes, there's actually, let me get the exact quote from you. There was a Democrat in Philadelphia who came out and said that he was appalled by the level of corruption he was seeing in the city of Philadelphia while working as a poll watcher. And he sent a call out and posted this video on the internet, retweeted by Rudy Giuliani.
Let's do it in the next segment. We're going to take a short break. We got Governor Eric Greitens on, Dr. Governor Eric Greitens. We're going to have Bill Mcginley talk about legal. Barris on analytics. We got Phil Klein. We got a whole nother hour. We're going to live reports, analysis. Here's the bottom line. Donald J. Trump has been reelected. Okay? We've got a play. We've called the play. We're now running the play. Okay? We're gonna go into federal court and try to sort all this madness out. If it can't be sorted, state legislature is going to deal with it. If they can't deal with it, contingent election is going to be in the House of Representatives. Donald J. Trump's going to take the oath 12 noon on the 20th.
Well, the virus has now killed more than 100 people in China, and new cases have been confirmed around the world.
So you don't want to frighten the American public.
France and South Korea have also got evacuation plans.
But you need to prepare for and assume
strongly warning Americans to avoid all non-essential travel to China.
That this is going to be a real serious problem.
France, Australia, Canada, the US, Singapore, Cambodia, Vietnam, the list goes on.
Health officials are investigating more than 100 possible cases in the U.S.
Germany, a man has contracted the virus.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
Japan, where a bus driver contracted the virus.
Coronavirus has killed more than 100 people there and infected more than 4,500.
We have to prepare for the worst, always, because if you don't and the worst happens.
War Room, Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome on the John Fredericks Radio Network on Real America's Voice, Dish Channel 219, and in Chicago, Comcast Channel 113. Of course, on Newsmax TV. Now in 70 million homes, thanks to Chris Ruddy and the team down there, Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon. Fog City Midge, that would be Maggie Vanderberg. And we just had our co-host, Raheem Kassam, up in Philadelphia. We got people all over the nation. We're going to go back. Sam Faddis up in Pennsylvania. We've got team coverage everywhere. We're going to get to Governor Eric Greitens in a second, one of the new stars over at Real America's Voice. But first, Maggie, I know you've been very disappointed. You're back here in D.C. from traveling. You're one of the top influencers all over the country. You're down the wall with us many times. You are where the action is. I know you're very frustrated with the Republican Party. Why?
Look, I want to know, where is the GOP? It's time for them to stand up, to speak up. This is why they were elected. I want to know what people were doing in the last hour. I want to see Republican members of Congress. I want to see senators. I want to see people in front of the cameras and hourly if they have to. I mean, I want people to get out there and let people know that they're standing up. They're not going to allow this election to be stolen from the American people. And this is why they were elected, to represent their constituents and the American people. So now is the time to represent. So I want people out in front of the media. I want them posting online. I want them tweeting. And I want them responding to what's happening and putting themselves into this fight. We've got a couple congressmen out there who are tweeting. We've got Lee Zeldin and Matt Gaetz, who are standing up and standing behind the president right now. But I'm really ashamed of what I'm seeing. A lot of the GOP just sitting back and trying to see where this is going to fall and what side they're going to take.
Where's Nikki Haley?
Yeah, where is she?
Tell me where she is.
Well, she did write a tweet a little while ago, basically eulogizing the president, which I'm good for Matt Gaetz. He called her out, so. But it's really sad to see what she's doing.
Well, she's come not to bury, she comes to bury, not to speak evil, but to bury Trump. No. Brutus. Sean Spicer, big story. And Chris Ruddy, I know Chris is listening. You just texted me. Brother Ruddy, we love Newsmax. And I love me some Sean Spicer. He's another naval officer, Lieutenant Commander Spicer, maybe a commander by now. Heck of a guy. I don't like the headline I'm seeing in Politico. Spicer breaks with Trump, says he sees no signs of voter fraud.
Wow.
Sean, note to self, when they're dumping 135,000 votes, it's called election administration. It's mass voter fraud. You just got to pay attention here. We're going to start running all these regression analysis and show you this just can't happen in normal life, Sean.
You know how we've been saying.
I know you're a public affairs officer, but I realized, where'd you go? University of Rhode Island. Didn't you take like calculus? This just doesn't happen. This is not onesies, twosies. This is mass. Okay? And you're on Dan Abrams' thing on Sirius XM on some big liberal show. You don't have to go up to them and get scratching back of the ear and they roll over like a little puppy and they scratch you on the belly. Okay? It's time to fight, brother. You were the first comms director. You gotta throw down. You gotta throw down. Didn't the President of the United States just give him an interview on the show? Didn't Trump give you an interview, biggest ratings you ever had? You gotta do a brother a favor. You just gotta stand tall. Okay, you gotta stand tall. Jack Maxey.
Well, I was just saying, we've been talking all year long that courage is infectious, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Clearly, Sean Spicer has immunity.
What did Winston Churchill say? The most important of all the virtues is courage, because it is upon courage that all the other virtues rest. That's how important courage is. We got to do it. We got to do it. You guys got to step up. Maggie Vanderberg is going to call you out by name every day.
Yes.
This is the great thing about having one of these. Somebody comes back to Washington D.C. and says, it's really kind of a business, isn't it? The Patriots, they don't call it the swamp for nothing. They're all looking, by the way, the most powerful guy in the world is Mitch McConnell. Mitch is in high cotton. I think Sean's pitching. Sean, look, I love you, brother, so I don't mean to pick on you, but I am. Are you pitching to be comms director for Mitch in the new power base? Do you think Mitch McConnell is interested in Donald Trump winning? Because trust me, he's not. Okay? Because if Donald Trump wins, or when Donald Trump collects on his victory, because he has won, Mitch McConnell's not the most powerful man in the universe. Okay? He's just old Mitch over there in the Senate. Right now, he's the most powerful man in the universe. Stock market's on fire. Why is stock market's on fire? BlackRock guys come out, oh, we'd love divided government. We love divided government. Because you know why? Because now the Bidens, who are bought and paid for by the Chinese Communist Party, can get in business with the Republican establishment and all of Wall Street and all of corporate America. And guess what the first thing you're going to do? Get back in business with the Chinese Communist Party. Let the good times roll. Get rid of Navarro. Get rid of Lighthizer. Get rid of Pompeo. Get rid of Trump. We don't want any stuff. We want the business. We want business to roll. We want to go back to the old times. That's why the stock market's on fire. I want to go now to our guest, Governor Eric Greitens. Eric, by the way, I love the new show on Real America's Voice. Thank you very much for joining us. What's your perspective? Dude, you're a Navy SEAL. You've fought for your country. You're a patriot. You've been a governor. You have fought through the firestorm like nobody else. Tell me, what is this? Because Brian Kennedy came on and called it a coup. You're a level-headed guy. Kennedy's a level-headed guy. Tell me what is going on here.
Dude, the fight's on. The fight is on, Steve, and it is a big fight. And I'm proud of the fact that, I mean, you know this, like Real America's Voice, Just the News, have now launched an effort to investigate all of these election irregularities. And that shouldn't scare anybody. Like, we should be digging in and figuring out why we're having all of these anomalous results. I mean, you don't have to have a degree in statistics to look at what's happening in some of these precincts, at least what appears to be happening. You look at the voter turnout. You look at the way that these ballots have come in. Let's get to the bottom of this and figure out what's going on. And I think people need to, like, strap on and get ready. Like, we have to go, and we're going to have to fight for and make sure that we get the truth in every precinct in America. And it needs to happen in Wisconsin. It needs to happen in Michigan. It needs to happen in Pennsylvania. It needs to happen in Arizona and Nevada, and we have to be willing to go. And I want to say, like, I agree 100% with Maggie. Like, we need to have everyone who's claiming to be a Republican, everybody who's there in the good times, it's time to come out and fight. But I will tell you from personal experience, like, there's a tremendous amount of cowardice in the establishment of the Republican Party. And you've seen it throughout history. But we've got to have everybody who's willing to fight should say, hey, this is something that every American can get behind, getting to the bottom of what's happening in our election.
You know, Eric, when I first met you, one of the things that most impressed me was that your great love of the Constitution. You had taken an oath to defend it as a naval officer. You understand that you've been governor of a major state. Walk people through this aspect of when this, what a Secretary of State and being able to certify a vote, and you can only certify a vote when you have the real votes, not fraudulent votes, not unverifiable votes, but real votes. If you can't certify it, how does the state legislature get involved? And this whole, because we're hurtling towards a constitutional crisis sometime around early December of this year. Walk our audience through that.
All right, well, let's first of all, let's step back really big picture, because a lot of the mainstream media and other people will try and make this really confusing, and they'll try and make it sound convoluted. It's actually really simple. The Constitution says that every American gets equal protection under the law. This was part of the basis of the Constitution and the founding. The whole idea was that no matter where you were born, no matter what background you had, no matter where you lived or you came from, every American citizen got equal protection under the law. It's a fundamental principle. Now, how does that apply to voting? Well, what that means is that everyone's vote has to be equally protected under the law. Now, let's go back to Bush versus Gore for a minute. Now, a lot of people remember the 5-4 decision. In fact, there was also in Bush versus Gore, there was a 7-2 Supreme Court decision where they said what Al Gore was trying to do. Al Gore wanted to have a recount of votes in just 3 Democratic counties in Florida. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. 7-2 vote. They said, no, everybody in the state, equal protection under the law. That's principle number 1. Principle 2 is that the Constitution is exceptionally clear that the state legislature, and only the state legislature, sets the manner, the time, and the place of elections. What does that mean? That means that activist judges can't come in and change the rules. That means that an election board can't come in and change the rules. So when we talk about legitimate votes being counted, that means that they're legitimate in the eyes of the Constitution. And what the Constitution says is that only the rules that the state legislature sets are the valid rules. So the rules that are set by the elected representatives of the people. So again, those are those 2 really simple principles: equal protection under the law, and number 2, that it's only the state legislature that sets the manner, the time, and the place for elections. So where does that leave us now? It leaves us in a place where what's ultimately going to happen, this is my belief, is that the Supreme Court is going to have to step in. In some of these states, the Supreme Court is going to have to say, look, under the Constitution, you have to have equal protection under the law, and I do believe that they'll stand up for that principle. And they should also stand up for the principle that the rules that are set by the state legislature are the ones that we follow, not some judge deciding that you get an extra 3 days to vote, or not some election board putting in new rules. So those are the key constitutional issues that are going to be at stake here.
Do you believe that we'll blow through the safe harbor, and that we won't, because of state legislatures having to perform their duty and the state secretaries of state not being able to certify this, that will actually go to what is called a contingent election in the House in January?
Look, I hope not, Steve. I hope not. I think that the American people want to choose their president. The first time that happened, a lot of folks will remember, was in 1800 when the election actually went to the House. That was when Thomas Jefferson was running against Aaron Burr. They had a tied number of electoral votes. Alexander Hamilton actually stepped in. He didn't like Jefferson or Burr. Alexander Hamilton actually stepped in on behalf of Jefferson, helped push Jefferson over the line in the House of Representatives. And what ended up happening there, people may remember, is that Hamilton and Burr ended up squaring off in a duel, and Burr's bullet actually ended up ending Hamilton's life. Look, the fact is the American people want their votes to decide the presidential election. I certainly hope that we don't end up there. And I think that it's in the best interests of everyone, and especially the president, that we actually get state legislatures to come in and certify and do what they need to do. But it's going to require the Supreme Court to act swiftly.
Eric, can you give us details? What's your Twitter handle? The show's fantastic. Talk to us about the show. Give us your Twitter handle. We've got about a minute left.
Yeah, thanks, brother. We'd invite everybody to come out. Follow me at Eric Greitens on Facebook. It's real simple. Just put in Eric Greitens, Greitens, in the show. Actionable Intelligence, you can watch it right here on Real America's Voice, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 Central every day. We've got a great lineup. We've had some fantastic guests on. Rudy Giuliani, Victoria Tenzing have come on to really walk us through what's happening. We've had some fun guests on, like Frank Mir, UFC undefeated, or two-time heavyweight champion. We've got a lot of really good guests on, and we're speaking straight to the American people. It's a show that respects the intelligence of the American people, respects the service of our heroes on the front lines, and I'm really proud of what we're doing.
Governor, thank you very much. Governor Eric Greitens, one of the great Americans, a true patriot. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Eric Greitens. That's what I love about this movement. We got the smartest guys on our side of the football. You got an hour. You got Brian Kennedy. You get Eric Greitens. You get you're going to have Bill McGinley, right? And look at that crowd of deplorables out in Maricopa County. There's not an ounce of back down in this movement, right? Not an ounce of back down. So we're going to have the back of Donald J. Trump We're closing on victory, right? We're not going to give this thing up. Okay, short commercial break. We're going to have Phil Klein next on War Room.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
On Newsmax TV, on Real America's Voice, now channel Dish Channel 219, Comcast Channel 113, John Frederick's Radio Network throughout the nation, a podcast with now almost, 17.5 million downloads. Throughout the world in Mandarin, on G News, GTV, and everywhere. We've got half of the audiences in here is from overseas. It's insane. It's fantastic. Now I want to introduce really a guy that's a hero to me, Phil Klein, director of the Thomas More Society, and this guy's a hammer. Today, remember, here's what today. Yesterday was going to be the day lives in infamy. It's not. We won. We're on this. Today is to show you the cavalry arrived. Whether it's Don Jr. and Kimberly Guilfoyle going to Georgia, whether it's Rick Grinnell in Nevada, Corey Lewandowski and Pam Bondi up in Philadelphia, in federal court, Rudy Giuliani, Jay Sekulow, they got it. They're on top of things. Bill Mcginley's talking to people. We got a plan. We got to play. We called the play. Okay, we're running the play. It's the old Green Bay sweep. Got some pulling guards in front. One of those pulling guards is Phil Klein. This is a no-nonsense hammer. We like hammers. Phil, I want to ask you first, because the Amistad Project, you're a hammer. You have been for years. You're one of the original guys Andrew Breitbart introduced me to. Talk about Zuckerberg. What is Zuckerberg doing, and tell them how people are putting the thumb on the scale in this I don't know. I guess it's a coup against President Trump, but trying to stop President Trump from closing on the victory he got on November 3rd.
Well, there's two things, as you know, Steve. If you want to control a country, you control the flow of information, check, and you control the way that a nation picks its leaders. And what Zuckerberg has done, in March of this year, the federal government appropriated $400 million to states to manage elections in COVID. Zuckerberg matched it. And he moved that money through a nonprofit that has picked out Democrat strongholds to pour monies in to change the way that we're running elections. Those Zuckerberg monies, and we've demonstrated this through court-ordered produced documents we obtained in federal court in Pennsylvania. Those documents tell Philadelphia, for example, how to run their election, how many voting poll places they will have, where the Zuckerberg boxes, I call them Zucker boxes, the drop boxes are placed, and he's actually paying the election judges and the people working and counting the ballots. At the same time, the Democrats are pushing Republicans out. They've invited a billionaire in the counting room. And that's happened in several states. This is deeply concerning. It's the privatization of our elections. If we allow it to continue, you know, there may be a day where you go in to vote on a machine, you punch the button, and up pops the gecko who says, elections brought to you by Geico. We cannot allow the private sector to run our elections. Zuckerberg money is all through this election. And so that is deeply concerning.
No, it's huge, particularly since it is the large corporations, though, the most woke, right? They're the ones that are coming after working class and middle class Americans the hardest. They're the ones in business with the Chinese Communist Party. They're the ones that are woke. It's all this woke capital. Talk to me about specifically. You're also, let's get down to the granularity. You're finding problems all over the nation. Let's go into that, Phil.
We've got lawsuits in Michigan, and let me tell you what we have confirmed. That the election official in court filings, they just admitted this today in court filings in response to our suit. They admit that they committed illegalities in the way that they counted the ballot in Detroit as it relates to thousands of ballots. What they have done and what Michigan law calls for, let's say you cast a vote and the barcode absentee and it's passed through the machine and the machine can't read it. What Michigan law does is it sets that ballot down on a table with 6 inspectors. Those 6 inspectors then get out a fresh ballot and they actually cast the vote for the voter who is not there, whose ballot couldn't be read by the machine. So they're filling out ballots and then they're counting those ballots. Now the law requires that there be a Republican and a Democrat present who sign off that the new ballot actually reflected the intent of the voter. That makes sense. If I'm playing a game of poker and we're betting and then the game's over and I lay down my hands and the other guy says, I'm not going to show you my cards, but I'm taking the money, there's a problem. And that's what's happened in Detroit. They admit that they violated the law. They also are admitting to that they have not and they have possibly altered barcodes on absentee ballots. So what this allows is it opens the door for fraud. It's a Democrat official that's hired Democrat activists, and they have filled out ballots for other people and cast that vote. We're suing, saying, oh, wait a minute, you got to hold up, and what we got to do is we got to do it right, and we got to follow the law. So that's some of what's happening in Michigan. You go to Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, we have a last-minute change by the Secretary of State that allowed for Democrat absentee ballots to be treated differently than Republican absentee ballots. She has allowed Philadelphia officials to take these ballots that were flawed, called the Democratic Party, and say, go get your vote and come back and fix these ballots. Republican jurisdictions out in Trump country, those county commissioners, those election officials have said this is a violation of the law, we can't do it. So you've got disparate treatment of voters in Pennsylvania. And it's deeper than that. If you take the Zuckerberg money and you go to Delaware County, Pennsylvania, where he's given millions, there is a drop box to vote every 4 square miles. That's 2 miles by 2 miles. In other words, a drop box within the mile of every home. You go out in Trump country, there's a drop box for every 1,100 square miles. So we're treating voters differently. There is a drop box for every 4,000 voters in Delaware County. There's a drop box for every 72,000 voters in Trump country. Now think about this. Governor Wolf, whose emergency orders we challenged and won in federal court, that's up on appeal. They found his decisions to be unconstitutional. And we're challenging that type of thinking everywhere. That steal of freedom, the governor's saying we are the law. We're not a part of the lawmaking process, we are the law. That can't stand in America. So we've challenged it, we've won. But his executive orders shut down in-person polling places, making it harder than in a generation to vote in person. Now, Steve, you know the demographics. Republicans prefer to vote in person on Election Day. Democrats prefer to vote in advance. So what you've got is you've got government targeting a demographic to make it hard to vote and targeting a demographic to make it easy to vote. It's the same strategy as the Democratic Party of the Deep South at the turn of the 20th century. They did it with blacks and whites at that time. And now it's Republicans and Democrats.
Well, I got you, Phil. I want to go back to Zuckerberg. Maggie, you got some breaking news about Zuckerberg. What is it?
Yeah, so earlier today, Facebook shut down the Stop the Steal Facebook group that had over 360,000 members. This page was shut down, and I mean, it just seems like these tech companies, Facebook and other ones, are acting on behalf of the Biden campaign.
Phil, what about this? What about Jack Dorsey taking down the president's tweet? What about Zuckerberg having everybody that's got a Facebook account? All the Freedom Works, every Tea Party patriot saying, hey, they don't get nearly the traction anymore. Everything gets pushed down. Are these oligarchs too powerful?
Absolutely. It is amazing to me, Steve. This is not the America that I grew up in, where somebody of that public stature can say, the American people, you're too stupid to get the information, so I'm going to be the filter. I'm going to be the one who decides what you get to hear. And that there's an entire political party that supports it? That's frightening. I heard a clip of Mr. Zuckerberg in which he said he had to stop this discussion that undermines democratic principles. I'm sorry, the lifeblood of a democracy is free and open speech and access to information. You don't have a democracy unless you have freedom of speech and access to information and transparency in government. We shouldn't be controlled by his algorithms and whatever intent he assigns within those algorithms. The American public is smart enough, they're intelligent enough, they deserve the truth. And the same thing is happening with these elections. We have one side rushing up to the line of scrimmage to get off the next play before the red flag is thrown on the field to say, let's have a replay. Let's take a look and make sure this was fair and accurate. And the laws allow us to pause. We don't have to certify electors until December. That gap is there for a reason, to make sure that the election was fair and square. And what's happening right now, and Mr. Zuckerberg is helping censor it, is you have Democrat officials in urban areas that control all the evidence. And we have them admitting that they violated the law. But they're saying, we don't want to share the evidence with you. Now, I've been in a lot of courtrooms. That's called circumstantial evidence. It's very, very powerful. Somebody has now admitted they've done a wrong, but you can't prove it until you can get in their house with a search warrant and see the gun that helped them commit the crime. They have no right to say that this data should not be viewed by Americans. The law requires it. So where are the videos of the drop boxes? Where are the logs when those ballots were picked up? Where are the ballots that they actually cast for other people so we can see and compare them to the original ballots? That's what the law requires, and they're hiding the ball. I think there's reason to pause, and there's substantial reason for investigation.
Phil, thank you. Can you tell us Can you tell us right now what Thomas More Society? How did you get information to you? Or get
you
your
go to www.got-freedom.com. got-freedom.com.
Okay, I want to take a quick. Phil, thank you very much. I want to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be back on. Just wanted to let you know, our YouTube has been taken down. It's been taken down because of my comment today about Fauci and Ray getting fired. And what they should do afterwards is, put their heads on pikes. That was obviously a metaphor. Madeline Peltz at Media Matters. But I'm glad you're so sensitive. You can take us down on YouTube. We're going to get even more powerful. Suck on this. We got it for cyberbullying. Suck on this. We won, you lost. He's president of the United States. He's going to remain president of the United States. We're going to get all 9 justices on the Supreme Court.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
We're going to bring it back to the War Room. Still up on YouTube. I had a couple of Twitter accounts taken down. I guess they didn't like the fact I said Jack Dorsey, U.S. Marshal, should go in. Jack, don't take it personally. You're taking down the President of the United States. Come on. Nothing personal, just business. Okay? We're not backing off, Jack. You should be, the U.S. Marshal should go in there because you're a national security threat. Right? You can't take down the Commander-in-Chief. You can't take down his Twitter feed. Heck, you can't take down ours for freedom of speech. What are you guys afraid of? Here's what you're afraid of. You lost. You're afraid of people repeating it. We're not going to back off saying that you lost. Donald Trump won. There's just a process. There's a couple of different ways to get to Inauguration Day. And we're getting there. You're just going to have to embrace the suck. Is that not true, Mr. Jack Maxey?
That is very true. And also, as this thing shakes out, there are going to be some people who are going to get caught with their cans in the cookie jar. I recommend that we start pulling stacks of 10 out of these newfound ballots. We test them for fingerprints. We scan as many as possible so that we can start doing AI on the handwriting. I don't care how many boxes you check. You can't make them all different when you're checking hundreds of them at a time. I think that this is a great opportunity to illustrate what has gone on in many of these cities for decades. This time, they just got a little bit over their skis, and I think it's time to expose them.
Maggie, you fell in with a real group of pirates there. Take down poor Maggie's Instagram account because she's got no livelihood, right? So
that would be horrible. Well, what they're doing is seriously evil. Like by shutting down information that is critical to people, by taking away something that many people spent years building up. Honestly, it's criminal what they're doing. And it's evil, frankly.
Her name is Maggie Vanderhaeg. You can see her on Fox City Image.
Every time it's a different last name. I like it.
Vanderberg says Vanderhaeg. Vanderberg, Maggie Vanderberg, and she's Fox City Image. Go to her Instagram account now, one of the most important influencers. Do we have Bill Mcginley? Can I bring Bill? Let's bring Bill. Bill, I'm in need of a lawyer, so we're glad you showed up. Bill.
In the legal
okay,
profession, we call you an annuity, by the way.
So, brother, here's the thing. Bill Mcginley designed the play. The play's been called. They're running the play. They're in Phoenix now. They're in Grinnell's in Nevada. Bossy's in Phoenix. Don Jr. and the team's down in Georgia. The president's about to come up on stage any minute now. We'll cut to him. You got Rudy and Pam Bondi up in Philadelphia. You got Reince going to Wisconsin. Charlie Spees is in Michigan and others. Tell us what's going on. Give us the big picture. We're finally on offense, but what is the offense? Tell our audience is now all jacked up. They finished going through the depression on the 4th. They're now ready to fight, and they see the cavalry arriving. Tell us what's going on in federal court and what's the end game there.
Okay. Number one, the most important cases that are being filed right now are the transparency cases where they're trying to get the poll watchers in to be able to observe the count of the ballot close enough so that they can see it, right? Part of this is stop flying blind. What we need to be doing is we need to be fighting in every single one of these counting locations to make sure that our observers and their observers are close enough so that they can actually see what's happening with the ballots, how the poll workers are handling the ballots, how they're counting the ballots, to make sure that the process is running smoothly. One of the things that people need reminding of here is that an election administrator is not there to manage a process for one party or the other, one candidate or the other. An election administrator is there to make sure that you have a stable, objective, fair process that allows the ballots to be counted with full transparency so that people can have confidence in the result of the election, and so that they think that they have confidence that it's a legitimate election. Part of this is that what needs to be happening right now is we need to see how these counting locations were designed, right? Is this a break from the past, how that they've done it, claiming that the virus required them to put extra space in there? Let's see the debate. So in a lot of these things, what you typically have is people file in federal court, whether it's a substantive or procedural issue, but simultaneously what you do is you file an open records request, not only with the Secretary of State's office, but you file it with the county registrars. And you're going to request a number of things. Number one, you're going to ask for all of their training materials. Let's see how these workers were trained. What did they say? Were there any adjustments that were made for this election given the contentiousness of the presidential election, right? Did they ground it in law? Are they complying with the law? What were these workers told? Let's see the PowerPoint presentations. Let's see the floor plans that they were developing in the summer and in the fall as to how this was going to happen. Why do you need this? Because when you walk into federal court, you just can't assert an allegation. You need to back it up with evidence. And one of the ways that you're going to get that evidence is through these open records requests so that you can compare it to what they're doing now and to what they did in the past. Why the deviation? They're obviously going to have some adjustments because of COVID, but what the heck is going on? And why is it that these observers are being placed 25 feet away? You might as well just sit at home and watch the television camera, because this is just something that's, you can't let this stand. Transparency is righteous in any sort of recount or initial canvass or election contest. There has to be full visibility on this. Time to go on offense and start pressing on multiple fronts. Comms, open records requests, litigation. Don't give any quarter on this. You need to stand tall for this.
So tell us, this legal process, by the way, I just want to officially announce so everybody knows on Real America's Voice, we did get pulled down on YouTube. The reason we got pulled down on YouTube and Twitter, we're too powerful now. We're getting real information. You know, Fox won't do it. We're getting real information to the American people. We're leading to this uprising. They're not going to back down. And people should know, you can post down on Twitter, you can post down on YouTube, you can post down on anything you want to. We're not stopping. Right, we're up now. We're going to be up tomorrow. We've got methodologies to get up. We're not going to back down, and people will find us, and we'll get even bigger and bigger and bigger. Yes, ma'am.
And can I just say, it's crazy because the reason we have blown up so much in the last few days is because people are turning away from the mainstream media, and they're coming to you for answers, for clarity on these things, and of course, they don't want people really hearing that.
Sure, they want you dumb and stupid and in servitude,
and just believing one narrative.
Exactly.
Notice one thing that's missing from all of this: the media is not covering the Trump people out rallying in front of these counting places all around the country. They're not covering us. They want to cut us back. They're not afraid of the virus anymore. You notice there's not been one comment about people catching the virus in these protests. You know what they're afraid of? They are afraid of the most powerful thing on planet Earth, and that is the righteous indignation of free American people when they think they have been grifted.
Amen. They're not going to back off. Okay, Bill, what's this process of going into federal court, right, and starting to sue and try to get radical transparency, get the Justice Department involved, everything like that. The end game of that is to do what? Because there's a ticking time bomb. There's a ticking clock on the other side of this on December 6th that you've basically got to you have to certify these elections. You have to certify the vote. If you can't certify the vote, how can and you're in court? What happens? Do you run out of time, or what goes on?
Now, what happens is there are some statutory deadlines for the secretaries of state and the county registrars need to get their data in so that they can have a timely process for certifying the elector slates from the different states. And so during the initial canvass, what's going to happen here with these lawsuits is that it may slow it down, but the march is going to continue to the certification. Well, let's back up and understand the three-step process here that we're talking about before we get into the electoral college process in a potential contingent election if it ever comes to that. Number one, we're in the canvass process right now. What we're seeing is the initial count of all of these ballots. And so the poll workers have their election day. They should have all of their election day totals in. What they're doing now is they're starting to count and continuing to count the absentee and mail-in ballots that are coming in. Also, the Pennsylvania Secretary of State just had a press conference just a little bit ago where she started talking about the number of provisionals, and it sounds like there's a substantial number of provisional ballots in Pennsylvania that will be counted last. So this is going to be a multi-stage process, especially in Pennsylvania, where they're trying to get to the point where they can say that they have the vote totals. The second step is obviously going to be a recount. If you're with under 1% or 0.5%, depending upon the state law, it's either an automatic recount or a candidate can request it or voters can request it. In some states, they have to pay for that. And then they're going to go in and you can either get, the automatic recount or where they just basically run the tapes, or you can get into a manual recount where they're actually going to put the ballots on the table and you're going to have a Democrat and a Republican looking at the ballots as they continue to count them. In some states, you can lodge challenges. For example, if you have an overvote on a ballot where people voted for two candidates for president, that could potentially be a basis for a challenge. And then, of course, everybody's going to really want to look at the undervote ballots, which are the ones where it did not register a vote for president, but there might be some sort of marking where people are trying to discern voter intent. After the recount is done, then you're going to head over into the election contest if it's still really, really close. During the election process, that's where some of the lawyers are actually going to sit at the tables and start going ballot by ballot. And they're going to challenge ballots. This is where ballots are typically taken out if they're deficient or otherwise violate law, or it's also where you're going to try and add ballots as well, because this is where you should see a number of the partisan lawyers are out there finding these absentee ballots for the Republicans and for President Trump that may not have been included. We've talked about this many, many times on this show. The way to do this is you have to do offense and defense. You have to practice addition, addition, addition. I don't care if you're up or down. You need to go out there and protect your voters. If their ballots have been rejected, you need to figure out why. And if they have an opportunity to cure, then you need to play that rule, and you need to get those ballots cured so that they get into the pile. If this thing comes down to tens of votes, hundreds of votes, or even a couple thousands of votes, across the various counties in all of these states, aggregating those votes that you may be able to pick up could have a material difference on the outcome of this election.
As you see this now, with Atlanta coming up with Fulton County with 55,000 ballots, and in Pennsylvania you're coming up with hundreds of thousands, and I don't even know how that happens, right? How you misplace hundreds of thousands of ballots. Could they ever get to a thing of they certify this, and if they don't, when does the state legislatures get involved, and then when does it get kicked to the Congress for a contingent election?
Well, Florida 2000 is kind of our reference point because that was a recount that went on for several weeks. Probably, I think it approached Thanksgiving. And in the Bush v. Gore case, everybody focuses on the equal protection argument that was the legal basis for the decision. But what the Supreme Court was really signaling was this process has gotten so out of hand. If you delay it past December 8th, you risk disenfranchising an entire state and not having their electoral votes count in the Electoral College. That means that everybody's going to be racing to meet that December 8th deadline. And so December 8th is kind of the date that I think is the first marker where people are going to say, we need to have this done. Federal law provides for a safe harbor on that date that basically puts a presumption of conclusiveness on the Electoral College electors that are certified by the state. And that can be by the governor. It depends upon state statute. It's a design and regime that the state legislature is supposed to create. But Article 2 also talks about the important role that the state legislature can play. And so you saw numerous articles coming out during the Florida recount that talked about there were active discussions going on with the Florida legislature because there was concern that Florida could be completely blocked out of the Electoral College if they didn't meet the safe harbor deadline. And of course, December 14th is the date that the Electoral College is supposed to meet in the various state capitals in order for them to cast their votes for president, which are the ones that determine who will serve either a second term if President Trump's a second term or a Biden first term.
Bill, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. We're going to get your Twitter handle and everything up in the next segment. Really appreciate you taking the time this evening. Okay, this War Room Pandemic, formerly on Twitter and YouTube. It's too powerful. They don't want you to hear this information. It's too dangerous for you. Back in a moment.
Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room Pandemic. Stephen K. Bannon. We're going to go to the President of the United States is speaking. Just want to tell everybody on Parler, if you can't get us on Twitter, go to Parler. We have at War Room Pandemic, all one word. So go to at War Room Pandemic, or we've got a new handle there, Bannon War Room, all one word. Want to make sure you go. That's Parler, at War Room Pandemic, or Bannon War Room. Go to either one. We'll be putting up all kind of notices. We'll make sure you get to the show. They're not going to stop the truth from coming out. Remember, he's president. He won the presidency in a massive landslide. We're going to close on that victory. He's going to be inaugurated. The left is just going to have to suck it. I don't care if Jack Dorsey doesn't like it or Mark Zuckerberg doesn't like it. I don't care if Rachel Maddow doesn't like it. We don't care. This is a fact. What they have is opinion. We're now going to go to the President of the United States at the White House. We will see tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Election Quinnipiac, which was wrong on every occasion that I know of, had Joe Biden up by 5 points in Florida, and they were off by 8.4 points, and I won Florida easily. So they had me losing Florida by a lot, and I ended up winning Florida by a lot. Other than that, they were very accurate. They had him up 4 points in Ohio, and they were off by 12.2 points. And I also won Ohio, great state of Ohio, very easily. The Washington Post said Biden up 17 points in Wisconsin, and it was basically even. They were off by about 17 points. And they knew that. They're not stupid people. They knew that. Suppression. There are now only a few states yet to be decided in the presidential race. The voting apparatus of those states are run in all cases by Democrats. We were winning in all the key locations by a lot, actually. And then our numbers started miraculously getting whittled away in secret. And they wouldn't allow legally permissible observers. We went to court in a couple of instances, and we were able to get the observers put in. And when the observers got there, they wanted them 60, 70 feet away, 80 feet, 100 feet away, or outside the building to observe people inside the building. And we won a case, a big case, and we have others happening. There are lots of litigation, even beyond our litigation. There's tremendous amount of litigation generally because of how unfair this process was. And I predicted that. I've been talking about mail-in voting for a long time. It's really destroyed our system. It's a corrupt system, and it makes people corrupt even if they aren't by nature. But they become corrupt. It's too easy. They want to find out how many votes they need, and then they seem to be able to find them. They wait, and then they find them. And you see that on election night. We were ahead in vote in North Carolina by a lot, tremendous number of votes. And we're still ahead by a lot, but not as many, because they're finding ballots all of a sudden. Oh, we have some mail-in ballots. It's amazing how those mail-in ballots are so one-sided, too. I know that it's supposed to be to the advantage of the Democrats, but in all cases, they're so one-sided. We were up by nearly 700,000 votes in Pennsylvania. I won Pennsylvania by a lot, and that gets whittled down to, I think they said now we're up by 90,000 votes, and they'll keep coming and coming and coming. They find them all over. And they don't want us to have any observers, although we won a court case. The judge said you have to have observers. Likewise in Georgia, and they're appealing. Actually, they're appealing. We won a case that we want people to watch, and we want observers, and they're actually appealing, which is sort of interesting. I wonder why they'd appeal, that all we want to do is have people watch as they do the vote tabulations. Likewise in Georgia, I won by a lot, with a lead of over getting close to 300,000 votes on election night in Georgia. And by the way, got whittled down. And now it's getting to be to a point where I'll go from winning by a lot to perhaps being even down a little bit. In Georgia, a pipe burst in a faraway location, totally unrelated to the location of what was happening. And they stopped counting for 4 hours. And a lot of things happened. The election apparatus in Georgia is run by Democrats. We also had margins of 300,000 in Michigan. We're way up in Michigan, won the state. And in Wisconsin, we did likewise fantastically well. And that got whittled down. In every case, they got whittled down. Today, we're on track to win Arizona. We only need to carry, I guess, 55% of the remaining vote, 55% margins, and that's a margin that we've significantly exceeded. So we'll see what happens with that, but we're on track to do okay in Arizona. Our goal is to defend the integrity of the election. We'll not allow the corruption to steal such an important election, or any election for that matter. And we can't allow anybody to silence our voters and manufacture results. I've been doing a lot of public things for a long time. I've never had anything that's been as inspirational, by people calling, talking, sending things to us. I've never seen such love and such affection and such spirit as I've seen for this. People know what's happening, and they see what's happening, and it's before their eyes. And there are many instances which will be reported very shortly. There's tremendous litigation going on, and this is a case where they're trying to steal an election. They're trying to rig an election, and we can't let that happen. Detroit and Philadelphia, known as two of the most corrupt political places anywhere in our country, easily cannot be responsible for engineering the outcome of a presidential race, a very important presidential race. In Pennsylvania, Democrats have gone to the state Supreme Court to try and ban our election observers, and very strongly. Now, we won the case, but they're going forward. They don't want anybody in there. They don't want anybody watching them as they count the ballots. And I can't imagine why. There's absolutely no legitimate reason why they would not want to have people watching this process, because if it's straight, they should be proud of it. Instead, they're trying, obviously, to commit fraud. There's no question about that. In Philadelphia, observers have been kept far away, very far away, so far that people are using binoculars to try and see, and there's been tremendous problems caused. They put paper on all of the windows so you can't see in, and the people that are banned are very unhappy and become somewhat violent. The 11th Circuit ruled that in Georgia, the votes have been in by Election Day, that they should be in by Election Day, and they weren't. Votes are coming in after Election Day. And they had a ruling already that you have to have the votes in by Election Day. To the best of my knowledge, votes should be in by Election Day. And they didn't do that. Democrat officials never believed they could win this election honestly. I really believe that. That's why they did the mail-in ballots, where there's tremendous corruption and fraud going on. That's why they mailed out tens of millions of unsolicited ballots without any verification measures whatsoever. And I've told everybody that these things would happen because I've seen it happen. I watched a lot of different elections before they decided to go with this big, massive election with tens of millions of ballots going out to everybody, in many cases totally unsolicited. This was unprecedented in American history. This was by design, despite years of claiming to care about the election security. They refused to include any requirement to verify signatures, identities, or even determine whether they're eligible or ineligible to vote. People are walking in there. They have no idea. They're just taking numbers. They're writing down things, the workers, and doing a lot of bad things. And we have a lot of information coming and litigation that you'll see that will shake even you people up. And you've seen it all. The officials overseeing the counting in Pennsylvania and other key states are all part of a corrupt Democrat machine that you've written about, and for a long time you've been writing about the corrupt Democrat machine. I went to school there, and I know a lot about it. It hasn't changed. It's a long time ago, and hasn't changed. It's gotten worse. In Pennsylvania, partisan Democrats have allowed ballots in the state to be received 3 days after the election, and we think much more than that. And they're counting those without even postmarks or any identification whatsoever. So you don't have postmarks, you don't have identification. There have been a number of disturbing irregularities across the nation. Our campaign has been denied access to observe any counting in Detroit. Detroit is another place, and I wouldn't say has the best reputation for election integrity. Poll workers in Michigan were duplicating ballots, but when our observers attempted to challenge the activity, those poll workers jumped in front of the volunteers to block their view so that they couldn't see what they were doing. And it became a little bit dangerous. One major hub for counting ballots in Detroit covered up the windows again with large pieces of cardboard. And so they wanted to protect and block the counting area. They didn't want anybody seeing the counting, even though these were observers who were legal observers that were supposed to be there. In Detroit, there were hours of unexplained delay in delivering many of the votes for counting. The final batch did not arrive until 4 in the morning, and even though the polls closed at 8 o'clock. So they brought it in, and the batches came in, and nobody knew where they came from. We've also been denied access to observe in critical places in Georgia. In multiple swing states, counting was halted for hours and hours on election night, with results withheld from major Democrat-run locations only to appear later. And they suddenly appeared, and they all had the name Biden on them, or just about all. I think almost all. They all had the name Biden on them, which is a little strange. I challenge Joe and every Democrat to clarify that they only want legal votes, because they talk about votes, and I think they should use the word legal votes. We want every legal vote counted, and I want every legal vote counted. We want openness and transparency, no secret count rooms, no mystery ballots, no illegal votes being cast after Election Day. You have Election Day, and the laws are very strong on that. You have an Election Day, and they don't want votes cast after Election Day, and they want the process to be an honest one. It's so important. We want an honest election, and we want an honest count, and we want honest people working back there, because it's a very important job. So that's the way this country is going to win. That's the way the United States will win. And we think we will win the election very easily. We think there's going to be a lot of litigation because we have so much evidence, so much proof, and it's going to end up perhaps at the highest court in the land. We'll see. But we think there'll be a lot of litigation because we can't have an election stolen like this. And I tell you, I have been talking about this for many months with all of you, and I've said very strongly that mail-in ballots are going to end up being a disaster. Small elections were a disaster. Small, very easy-to-handle elections were disastrous. This is a large-scale version, and it's getting worse and worse every day. We're hearing stories that are horror stories, absolute horror stories. And we can't let that happen to the United States of America. It's not a question of who wins, Republican, Democrat, Joe, myself. We can't let that happen to our country. We can't be disgraced by having something like this happen. So it will be hopefully cleared up, maybe soon, I hope soon, but it'll probably go through a process, a legal process. And as you know, I've claimed certain states, and he's claiming states, and we can both claim the states, but ultimately I have a feeling judges are going to have to rule. But there's been a lot of shenanigans, and we can't stand for that in our country. Thank you very much.
We now return to our regularly scheduled program.
There.
Yeah, and again, just to break this down for our viewers, because there can be, with the mainstream media and all of the different messages that go back and forth, the very simple constitutional argument is that the Constitution very clearly says that it's the state legislature which shall determine the time, place, and manner of elections, and that it's not up to a judge, it's not up to an election board to go in and change that it's only the state legislature that has the authority to do that. And yet, in some of these battleground states, you've had judges, election boards who've gone in and changed that. Do we have that right?
Yes, and I appreciate you bringing up the judicial branch, because the role of judges here is to not be activists. It's not to go in and change the state law by whatever they prefer, or to defer to other state actors that are outside the scope of what the U.S. Constitution provides for, which is whatever the legislature has designated, as long as that law is constitutional, equal protection. All of those things matter, of course. But here, we're not even into that province of even looking at the legislative action. We're even way outside of this. And so this should be a very, very simple call that for a judge, when we go to court and we are saying, Judge, please enforce the law, enforce the U.S. Constitution, that's asking a judge to act as an independent arbiter, fairly and appropriately apply the U.S. Constitution. That is their role. That is their job. It's like an umpire in baseball. You don't call a ball and strike based on whether you prefer it's a ball and strike. And you also don't say, hey, this is too political. One half of the stadium's going to be mad at me no matter what I do, so I'm not going to make the call. No, you make the call. You make it fairly. You make it appropriately according to the rule book.
Yeah, and Jenna, walk our viewers through what you think are the most likely